And building on the same, and my question would be for Parmesh now. You talked about values, you talked about culture, and every one of us, when we are at work, when we are at home, we are not only me as an individual, but we also are our community, our family, our culture, and a lot more. Um, the question for Parmesh is, what unconscious biases are at play here? That's a question. And what is this challenge that we are up against?
So there are many unconscious biases at play, of course, right? Because when you live in heteronormativity, that becomes the norm. And it's something that you said earlier as well. And I think I've tried very hard to correct it in the book. There are two things that people, again, who might be uninformed don't realize, right? The first is that it's a tired trope now, but people think that being LGBTQ, for example, is not a part of Indian culture. And that is such nonsense. And I have a whole chapter in the book where I talk about that, right? It is very much part of our Indian history, Indian culture. We have a very rich history of inclusion and diversity, all the way back to our, to our holy texts of thousands of years ago. So I think it's very important for people to recognize that, in fact, to be Indian is to be inclusive. Homophobia is what is not in our culture. And the homophobia was brought in by the British. They went away 70 odd years ago. Finally, in 2018, Section 377 has gone away. Now we really want to send homophobia back. And maybe we can bring the Kohinoor back in return or something like that. Take your homophobia back, give the Kohinoor diamond is what I'm saying.
That would be fair.
But even if you don't want, fair deal, no? Very good.
Yes,
take it.
absolutely.
We've dealt with your homophobia 70 years. So I think that is one thing people need to understand, that when you are not being inclusive, you are not being Indian. You want to be a good Indian, please be inclusive. To WD, to LGBTQ, because we have, in our history, we have a long history of inclusiveness on all these dimensions, right? So that is one that I think people, and once people understand, then they get it, right? The second is about families. And I think it's really, really very important. And I think it's important for workplaces also, which are trying to go on the D&I journey. In India, I mean, I'll talk about LGBTQ specifically because, that's the quest I've been on. But in other parts of the world, people assume they're comfortable with your sexual orientation at home while growing up. And then you come to the workplace and you want equality. I think in India, it is very much the reverse, because very often, I mean, look at the people who are joining workplaces, right? Essentially, it's, and me included, we've spent our whole life giving exams. I don't think I had any deep conversation about my parents, about what matters to me, what is love, what are my values, what are my dreams. It was very much, your 10th board exams are coming, you better study, then 12th, then whatever, right? So who are the people who enter our workplaces? It's essentially young people who have given exam after exam, 10th, 12th. At some point, everyone thinks of JEE or any other exam. At some point, someone gives an MBA exam or whatever, right? So you have, in our workplaces, we have people who are very good at giving exams, but people who have crushed vital parts of who they are to enter and then emerge out of this funnel into your organization. And that is the truth, right? So the organization has to go way beyond acting like a good company. And this is the argument I make in the book. Your organization, in loco parentis, you have to think that your organization, you are a parent of all these people who are entering your workforce. What does it mean to be a good parent is how you have to think about, right? You have to love them, you have to include them, you have to create spaces where they can be, you have to communicate to them that you are valid, we care for you, maybe because you're doing this often to compensate for the kind of broken infrastructures which are there at home. They may not. So in India, at least with LGBTQ, a lot of people come out first at the workplace. Then the workplace gives them that confidence, that infrastructure so that they can have that conversation at home. It's not the other way around, where you come out, you're comfortable at home, and then you go to the workplace, right? So I think people who are working on this, we really need to think about how it is an imperative to create these inclusive, safe workplaces for our, for all the employees who come in. And I would say, going back to Manisha, I really loved your point about the intersection of EVP and, customer value proposition. I would say this argument extends to the customer as well. You can indicate to the customer that we care about you. We care about what you value. I mean, it's a much deeper bond than just someone who is selling and someone who is buying, right? It becomes, you're a friend, you're an ally. You create a love mark, not just a trademark or a brand, right? And that's the point. So I can ramble on and on, so I'm going to keep quiet now.